One summer afternoon in 1947, a small plane carrying 11 people left Buenos Aires on a short trip to Santiago, but never made it. The plane Stardust sent a hurried message over the radio, Stendek. No one understood what it meant, but soon the chilling truth became all too clear. Extensive searches failed to uncover any trace of the aircraft or any of the people on board. Their fate remained unknown for 50 years, causing various conspiracy theories to circulate about the infamous disappearance. The plane, named Stardust, was an Avro 691 Lancastrian III. It was built for the Argentine Ministry of Supply and could accommodate 13 passengers safely. Its first flight was in November 1945 and had no reported issues on record. On August 2, 1947, Stardust carried 6 passengers and a crew of 5. The captain, Reginald Cook, was an experienced former Royal Air Force pilot who had flown in combat during World War II. In fact, Cook had been awarded the Distinguished Service Order and the Distinguished Flying Cross, so it's safe to say he knew how to fly a plane. Stardust's last flight was the final leg of BSAA Flight CS-59, which had started in London, England on an Avro York named Star Mist. It departed on July 29, 1947, and landed in Buenos Aires on August 1st. The passengers boarded Stardust to continue on to their final destination in Santiago. The passengers on board included 1 woman and 5 men of Palestinian, Swiss, German, and British nationality. Stardust left Buenos Aires at 1:46 p.m. on August 2nd, and for the most part, the flight was uneventful. And at 5:41 p.m., as the plane was approaching their destination, Harmer, the radio operator, sent a routine message in Morse code to the airport in Santiago, announcing their expected arrival, in only a few minutes of 5:45 p.m. However, mere seconds later, another message came through. Seconds after announcing their expected arrival, the Chilean Air Force received a concerning message, one they could not decipher. Although the transmission was said to be loud and clear, but very fast, the last word was not recognizable. The final Morse code message was ETA Santiago 17.45 hours Stendek. The airport radio operator asked twice for clarification of the last word, but all they got was a repeat of the exact same thing. There was no further contact after that. After the plane failed to arrive, and no further radio transmissions were received, panic arose and a full-scale search began. Intensive efforts were made by both Chilean and Argentine search teams, as well as by other BSAA pilots. After no initial findings, the head of the BSAA, Air Vice Marshal Don Bennett, personally directed a 5-day intensive search. But after a grueling pursuit, the team came to an eerie discovery. As unbelievable as it may seem, there was quite literally no trace of the aircrafts at all, or any human life. Not one single piece of wreckage was found, nor were any personal belongings. It was as though the plane had vanished into thin air. Investigators got to work trying to piece together the moments before the unexplained disappearance. Various searches were carried out over the years after the incident, and still, no wreckage was ever found. The strangeness surrounding the event undoubtedly ignited numerous conspiracy theories. Rumors circulated that the disappearance of Stardust was a result of sabotage, meaning someone had deliberately taken it down. This theory was strengthened by the later disappearances of 2 other aircrafts that also happened to belong to BSAA. Except those aircrafts were found. Another theory plays into the passengers on board at the time. One of them was Paul Simpson, a king's messenger with diplomatic documents destined for the British Embassy in Santiago. Some believe the plane was targeted in order to destroy the documents. Another theory, similar to the last one, involved another passenger on board, Kashif Said Atala, a Chilean-Palestinian man believed to have been carrying a valuable diamond strategically sewn into the lining of his suit. Some believe Argentine guerrillas knew of this diamond and targeted the plane to retrieve it. If that's not far-fetched enough, there was one more theory that seemed to have a lot of support. Conspiracy theories involving UFOs have been circulated for as long as the Earth has existed, so it's no surprise that people believe aliens are somehow responsible for Stardust's disappearance. Years later, in 2000, the BBC television series Horizon presented an episode on the Stardust disappearance. Shortly after, the staff received hundreds of messages from viewers proposing explanations of Stendek. Some people believed the pilot was experiencing hypoxia, a condition that often affects the hands and feet, resulting from a lack of oxygen. Because of this possibility, it is likely that the pilot incorrectly tried to spell descent. However, another theory believes the spelling was fully intended. Others believed the World War II pilots used this seemingly obscure abbreviation when an aircraft was in hazardous weather and was likely to crash. Supposedly, the acronym meant Severe Turbulence Encountered, Now Descending Emergency Crash Landing. And then, of course, some people think the airport completely misunderstood the message, even though it was repeated multiple times in the exact same way. The most believed theory and the simplest explanation is that the spacing of the rapidly sent message was misheard or sloppily sent. In Morse code, determining accurate spacing between characters is vital to properly interpret the message. Stendek was apparently very close to other codes that could make better sense. Stendek uses the exact same dot-dash sequence as the code for Los Cerrillos Airport in Santiago, as well as the code for over. Alternatively, Stendek is only one character from spelling the call sign for another airport, Valparaiso, which was 110 kilometers north of Santiago. So, which theory proves true? The truth is, we still don't know. Given that none of the occupants are likely to have survived the disappearance, we will never know the true meaning of the very last Morse code message received from Stardust. For over 50 years, everything remained unknown, until the glacial ice started to melt and a chilling discovery was made. In 1998, two Argentine mountaineers climbing Mount Tupungato, about 60 miles southwest of Mendoza, and about 50 miles east of Santiago, came across a startling discovery. At first, it was impossible to tell what it was, but after some careful digging, a very big piece of the puzzle emerged. High up in the Tupungato Glacier, at an elevation of 15,000 feet, the mountaineers found the wreckage of a Rolls-Royce Merlin aircraft engine. Not only that, they also came across twisted pieces of metal and even shreds of clothing. Suddenly, the 50-year-old cold case was hot again, and authorities rushed to the scene. Given the magnitude of the location, further search expeditions took time to execute. In 2000, an Argentine Army expedition found additional wreckage, including a propeller and wheels, one of which still had an intact and inflated tire. Now that the wreckage had been found, it was easier to figure out what may have happened. Evidence claimed that the plane had a head-on impact with the glacier, which ruled out a mid-air explosion. The recovered propeller also told an intriguing story. The propeller showed that the engine had been running at near cruising speed at the time of the impact. Therefore, the pilot had not attempted to lower the speed or stop the plane before the sudden impact, although the condition of the wheels gave the best indication of what happened. The condition of the wheels proved that the undercarriage was still retracted, suggesting controlled flight into terrain was most likely, meaning the plane was unintentionally flown into the mountain rather than an attempted emergency landing. Now, the mysterious disappearance was categorized as a tragic accident, with even more explanations to follow. How did this tragic accident happen to 3 very experienced World War II pilots? Well, it is assumed that during the final portion of the flight, heavy clouds may have blocked visibility of the ground, contributing to a navigational error. Most believe the plane was flying through a jet stream at that time, a phenomenon not well understood in 1947, in which high-altitude winds can blow at high speed in directions different from those of winds observed at ground level. If the plane, which had to cross the Andes mountain range at 24,000 feet, had entered the jet stream zone, it would have significantly decreased their ground speed. If the pilots had mistakenly assumed their ground speed to be faster than it was, they likely assumed they had already safely crossed the Andes and started their descent to Santiago. Sadly, they were in fact still a considerable distance away and instead headed right for the Tupungato Glacier at high speed. It was suggested that strong winds may have brought down the aircraft in some other way. But why did it take so long to find the plane? It is likely that Stardust had flown into a nearly vertical snowfield near the top of the glacier, causing an avalanche that buried the wreckage within seconds, concealing it from search efforts. As the compressed snow turned to ice, the wreckage would have been frozen into the body of the glacier, staying put for several years. As the glacier slowly melted and broke apart, pieces of the wreckage likely fell further down the mountain, which explains the lower location of where the wreckage was mostly found. Between 1998 and 2000, only 10% of the total expected wreckage had emerged from the glacier, but more is expected to surface in the future. Even given the evidence pointing to the likelihood of what happened, it could not be 100% proven. Thus, the Argentine Air Force cleared Cook of any blame, concluding that the crash had been the result of a heavy snowstorm and very cloudy weather. But if we could figure out what Stendek was meant to say, we could find out what happened in the moments leading up to the disappearance. What we do know is that the code was at the end of a routine message announcing their arrival. We also know that after the request for clarification, only the last part of the code, Stendek, was repeated twice, and very fast. This gives the indication that panic may have been involved, which may help decipher what it means. It was simply a tragic accident, but now that the wreckage had been found, what about the passengers? Not long after the first pieces of the wreckage were found, a recovery effort took place in search of the occupants. However, it didn't take long. Human remains were quickly located and it was an unsightly scene. The impact of the crash completely dismantled the bodies of the occupants, and they were found in scattered pieces over a mile from the wreckage. They were in a remarkable state of preservation. Freeze-dried by icy winds, the remains had not suffered bacteriological decay, making it easier to identify. By 2002, the bodies of 5 of the occupants had been identified through DNA testing. But since it had now been well over 50 years since the crash, some of the victims had no remaining family members to notify. The Stardust mystery had now been solved. Thanks to good old nature, this unspeakable tragedy took over 50 long years to solve. and more pieces to the puzzle are still expected to emerge from the ice in the future as the glaciers continue to melt. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel for more videos.